you would call yourself an artist now?
Yes. So it was probably late 90s before I met Amy, when I finally realized what my definition of an artist was. So my definition of an artist is basically it is how you see the world. It has nothing to do with your ability to what you can do with a pencil, a pen, a paintbrush, clay, whatever. It's simply how you see the world. And it just all clicked when I finally kind of looked at it that way. That definition of an artist, you can defend it in any way, because there are people that are just so much more bright and vivid and just alive and creative, but can't draw a stick figure, can't do that. But of course they're an artist. Well, how many times have you heard someone say, I can't even draw a stick figure?
That's usually the common sentence. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter because that's output. Artist is really about the intake and how you process it up here. So it was one day, I'm in whatever period in art class. I think it was one of the periods where he didn't have an art class, so it was just he and I in the room. And I was working on a project or something, and then he just kind of walked up behind me, and it was toward the end of the year, and I think he knew that there was some college football talk. And he just kind of walked up behind me. He was like, don't you ever turn your fucking back on your art. And then I still get a little kind of emotional. It was kind of amazing. It finally came down to college, and I just knew instinctively fine art is not an option. My parents are not going to pay. So it was clear to me my parents are going to pay for college, which is awesome. But it was just instinctively understood I am not going to let them sort of have that conversation of, I want to be a fine artist.
Right.
So graphic design seemed like a practical way, because there was no doubt in my parents' minds, I'm creative, I've got technical skill when it comes to that sort of thing. And so graphic design was something that they would support. So that's the approach I took. So my parents are from Illinois.
Right.
So, in the Army, even though you travel around a lot, your home state is what establishes in-state
Residency.
tuition.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Got it.
I have made this choice to go with graphic design. That does not mean I have closed the door on fine art. My mentality has been, I don't need someone to tell me how to paint or what to paint,
right.
Or that sort of thing. After what I had learned from Mr. O in terms of the discipline and the challenging yourself and kind of being relentless in terms of what to expect of yourself, I felt like I had what I needed from a core sense to apply that to fine art, even though I wasn't taking it as a
right.
course.
To go be you.
So busted my ass as a graphic design student. But when it came to painting on the side, I would go down to the student craft center, and for what, I don't know why, but I would make my canvases, stretch them, and from scratch. And then so I would paint, and I realized there was this thing, and again, I'm trying to just sort of knock it off the chest and not try to package stuff for you. But this is where I developed a little bit of an issue with fine artists, and I learned very quickly that there was a student art exhibition where you submitted your stuff, and so I did a painting, submitted it. It was in the exhibition, but the thing that really sort of hit me was when I was talking with people and people that I realized, oh, these are fine art students. When they discovered that I was a graphic designer, I was put in a different class.
Because you were bastardizing your talent for
I was
commercial purposes.
commercial
Yep.
And blah blah blah. And that's where a little bit of a chip on my shoulder started developed. That still, I mean, to be honest, is there today.
Oh, yeah.
We go back, I guess, to the recurring theme of, okay, well, I am going to create art that is absolutely fucking kick-ass. And whether you have a degree or not, my shit is going to be just as good as your shit.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, slights or perceived slights, whether they're real or not, can be pretty amazing triggers and drivers to make people do awesome things. I mean, some of my biggest influences are, in terms of like Atlanta area influences, are like Todd Murphy, James Way, probably James Way above all, just from his technical abilities, have really, as an actual painter, oil, paint, and brush, and all that stuff. Always been just kind of in awe of him. And other artists that probably aren't coming to mind right now. But so don't get me wrong, and they are MFA artists. It took, as far as as far as my understanding is. So it's like I don't have like a built-in grudge against them, but I do kind of embrace my chip. In that I love that nobody taught me how to paint like this.
Yeah.
And that this started with just painting on cardboard with paint stuff. And it's just, this is what I do, is just, to me, feels very natural and pure in terms of just a desire I've always had to paint really interesting, compelling, technically good paintings, and there's some satisfaction that I did it myself.
The competitiveness, is that something that you can self-satisfy? Meaning when you look at something and there's no upper left, can you go, my bear kicks the ass of whatever this is, and that's good enough? Or do you need people to validate? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. So, as far as people, the ooh and ah validation, there's no way I can honestly say that's not a part of the equation. Like at the show, it was
Heavy validation night?
it was heavy validation. It was heavy validation. And so that's absolutely something that my ego, just like anybody else's ego, is gonna soak that stuff up. But when it comes to me sitting here and painting and that sort of thing, and this may be something I just need to kind of talk through. I don't know if I can just say it, but what has driven me, especially over the last 10 years, once I got into the Owen Norland space and all of that, is I honestly think every painting, the painting I'm working on, is going to be better than any painting I've ever done.
And what I love about that is, to me, that's what makes the sentence Mr. O said to you ring true. Sure, he meant it literally, like don't go play football and everything, but I think he also meant it, or is also probably proud that you do that. Because it's not, and someone of your success and of your accolades, I think it would be easy for you to rest, right? And, this has been so successful, I'm just going to live here. You do see it all the time, and that's why I think it's interesting. I wanted to pause for a minute, because I think the point you just made is hugely important. And it is that once you get to a plateau or a place or an upper left, a lot of people stay in that upper left. This is successful, I'm just going to ride this out. And I think when you get into, who am I to say the sentence, but when you get into true artists, there's that, I did that, now next. It's that compulsion where you went from birds in a magazine to this, to this, to this, to this, to this, and your to this will never stop.
Self-doubt is absolutely always in the picture. And the way that I've found that I keep it at bay is by staying on it, persistence. I think there is a lot as you go through life and add years and responsibilities and all that stuff. You know, foliage develops around your personality and your life. And foliage is great in that it, you know, you can think of it as, you know, each leaf is an experience. And as your foliage grows, your life is full of experiences and all of that. Foliage also creates shade. And a lot of saplings or other facets of the you that you could be can sort of get shaded out. But anyway, I think some of the most interesting, potentially interesting aspects of people are in the shade. And they're there, but for whatever reason, they just can't find a way to incorporate that into everything else that they do. And I think some of it is confidence of, well, I do this, but I've always been interested in this and that. You know, trying to like force puzzle pieces together. Whereas, just because you do this and you have an interest over here, they don't have to make sense. You know, as funny as it may sound, and this is because I'm reading a book right now, and I kind of thought about this for a second last night. One of the characters is in prison, and a little flash of anxiety hit when I started to kind of imagine myself being this character in prison. And what ran through my mind, and it was a cold chill, was, can I paint in prison? I mean, seriously.
That's
I mean, to me, that would be prison, like true prison, if I couldn't do something like that. O.M. Norling originally was a very practical device. I painted like this. I had a few successful shows. People bought paintings. But then again, 4 years went by. We had Max. 4 years, and then 4 years, when I started to like get frustrated and get back into this, I didn't want to paint that anymore. I wanted to go more realistic and add surreal elements into things and tell a different story. Well, actually, maybe tell the same story, but I wanted to just tell it in a different way.
Much different, yeah.
So, I've always been very interested in late 19th century, early 20th century hand-painted poster design and things like that from the graphic design world. James Way, Todd Murphy. So I started playing around with using some of those styles with a little Salvador Dali thrown in. And the first painting I did, it's our dog Lily had just died. And so I just used that as a way to, okay, I've never done a dark background before, let me do this. So that was the first like painting, and I was like, I like that. And then there was a school auction coming up, so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a painting. And then so I did it, and it was such an enjoyable experience. But it was so different that I think, out of respect for people who had bought the Jay Wilson, to suddenly shift to something that was totally not
Jay Wilson, right, not.
Out of respect for them, and as a dog ear, I created another name, O.M. Norling, in case I wanted to come back to this. Very practical reason for using O.M. Norling. And my great-great-grandfather, his name was O.M. Norling. Olaf Magnus Norling.
That's an awesome name, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I jumped on that real quick is he was born and raised until he was like 20 in Sweden. He was in the like mid to late 1800s. In my story, I move it to like 1932. But anyway, he did disappear, as my story says. He stowed away on a ship to come to America. And he actually landed in New Orleans and then just worked his way up the Mississippi as a farmer. Farmhand, basically working his way. Finally made enough. But what happened between New Orleans and ending up in Illinois, it's assumed he probably just worked his way up as a farmhand. But there's 7 years where there's a gap. 7 years went by before his family got a letter from him saying, "I'm sorry, I came to America." And so it fascinated me the 7 years of someone just kind of vanishing and then suddenly popping up again. Okay, so that was the practical part. Didn't want to confuse people, and if I wanted to go back to Jay Wilson style, then I could do that. But then something amazing and interesting and unexpected kind of happened. Being O.M. Norling kind of freed me up creatively. Totally unintentional. Didn't know this would happen. But things that are kind of hang-ups for Jay, creatively and that sort of thing, aren't hang-ups.
Wow.
In an O.M. Norling.
That's interesting.
When I'm in the O.M. Norling space, there are no limitations that Jay might have. There's kind of a natural inhibitor that I have is modesty. And when I paint as O.M. Norling, I can be the best fucking painter in the world.